when we've got the different due dates. And then over to these icons, I showed you the contact and the website, but probably the most either helpful, scary, or controversial one is these are called the scattergrams. And these are based not on national results from these schools, but on your particular school's results at these institutions. So, notice how with Clemson, I called it likely for Mary, and hopefully you'll be able to see all the different points here, but if I hit the scattergram, this is going to show all of the results at our school. So this is Providence Day, 2009 to 2013. Every single kid who has applied to Clemson put on a graph showing SAT scores down here. Now this is just the first two sections of the SAT, the critical reading and math. The Providence Day GPA over here. All these X's are kids who didn't get accepted. The diamonds, whether blue or green, are kids who are deferred or waitlisted. All right? Deferred means if you apply in their early deadline, and they don't say no, but they say not yet. They just bump you to the regular deadline. If it's a diamond and it's green, that means they were deferred and then eventually accepted. If it's a blue diamond, that means they were deferred and either eventually didn't get accepted or just decided not to pursue it. You know, let's say they got deferred at Clemson, but they got into South Carolina, and that's really where they wanted to go anyways, so they didn't even bother following up with Clemson. So it could be one of those two. And of course, the green blocks are, they got in. Here, since we're on the kid's page, we've put Mary, even though we're still in this is a potential college for her to apply to, we're put a red circle for Mary over there based on her SAT and GPA score, and that's why we've called it likely. There is not a kid in this whole area who didn't get in with numbers like hers. And so, and Clemson's a good one to pull up, and you'll see the ridiculous number of results we have for Chapel Hill, because that's always going to be for our school certainly the most popular place to go. Huge numbers applying. Notice how, though, everything kind of moved up and to the right compared to Clemson. You can just see visually how Chapel Hill is a little bit more competitive, or significantly more competitive than Clemson is. And that's, again, for our kids, and that's important. We're not talking about a resident of South Carolina. We're talking about a resident of North Carolina. Clearly, if we did the Chapel Hill chart for a student in another part of the country, these things would be even worse. I mean, worse from the parents' perspective, where all the greens would be up in here almost exclusively, because to get into Chapel Hill, as you probably know from out of state, is ridiculous. For us, it's just pretty darn tough.
Well, what are the two lines? So you got 4.3 over there, and then just over 1,400.
This is the average accepted GPA from our school. So if you look at, if you average all of the green blocks, they average to a 4.3, and the average of the SATs for the green blocks is a 1408. All right, so pretty high around. Now, but that's not saying you need a 1408 to get in, because these kids here, let's not look at the outliers, because who knows, that could be an athlete, that could be a kid with bringing some kind of diversity to the table, could be somebody with with connections, who knows. But here's a pretty good, actually over here, let's go. Pretty good swath of kids getting in this area, and notice how their SAT scores, are really closer to 1,200. So if you are 1,200, but you got a really good GPA, it's up around 4.3, you're in pretty good shape. You see one wait list up there in sort of the 1,200, 4.3 area. So that 1408, and I would say the 4.3 can be a little bit misleading, because of course getting averaged in are all these geniuses out here. They're throwing our curve off, so it's not like you need those numbers. They get in, that just happens to be the average. All right? And we still have, you can still see Mary right there. It's a little bit more iffy for her, as you can see from Chapel Hill, but this is looking still pretty good for her. Now, again, I made her up, but if you were looking at your kid's scattergram, let's say you work on a system like a timeline like ours, where this initial list is being put out there for you to see, let's say February of junior year. This might be her GPA, or this might be her SAT only after one taking of the SAT. It might even be in there just based on the PSAT. Well, she's got more tests to take. The kids are going to have their, not all the time, but I would say 8 or 9 times out of 10, the best SAT scores are going to come fall of senior year. We have them take them, and I'm sure your kids will take them spring of junior year. And they may get some very good scores then. They may even have such high scores that they're like, that's high enough, I'm good. But generally these kids get better with age. Even if they do test prep younger, some kids will do test prep maybe summer before junior year. Some will do it in the winter of junior year. They're still doing their best on these things fall of senior year. So, and that's a message for you too as a freshman. Don't overreact to stuff early in the testing cycle. You will get stronger. So anyways, if you're looking at this for Mary when it's the middle of junior year, know that probably this circle's going to move over because her tests are going to come up, all right? And her GPA will probably rise too, because you were mentioning weighted classes. At least with our kids, and I think pretty much everywhere, it's in the junior and senior year that they're taking more APs and more honors classes, so that's when the weight really starts to take off. Freshman grades, at least in our school, freshmen don't take any APs. They might take one honors class. So it's kind of an unweighted grade in a way. But once that weight starts to kick in, that's where the 3.7s become 4.2s very, very quickly. So hers can change. And of course, if we're going to get into highly competitive schools, why is Georgetown called a reach for Mary? Well, that's why. Because she's hanging around with the wait list. There is an accepted kid right there. And that's the other thing. One, you're seeing from this a smaller sample size, so it's a little less predictable. And that was the nice thing about both Clemson and Chapel Hill. We have so many applicants that you really start to see the band, and you can really identify, where a kid fits. But with Georgetown and other private schools, one, fewer kids are applying, but also this starts to let you see, and maybe BC will be even better at that. Let me see the BC one. Oops. Notice how there isn't as clear of a gray area. We got kids down here getting in and over here getting in, but somebody that strong with that kid, 4.6, and what's that? Close to 1,400 who got waitlisted or deferred and didn't eventually get in. So when you start to see the variation of decisions, that tells you, oh, okay, now we're dealing with a smaller private school. Numbers are important, but numbers aren't everything. Now we've got kids with maybe these kids are have written fantastic essays and have great recommendations. Maybe these kids have unbelievable extracurricular involvement that is really helping them out. And by the flip side, maybe these kids don't. They obviously are geniuses on the standardized tests, all 1,500 and over, but the GPAs weren't that great. This kid's got both good SATs and high GPAs, but maybe isn't really bringing much else to the table. So the scattergrams can be really, really valuable. They can also be a little bit scary. But they are, I think, pretty good because they can be a dose of reality. And again, we use them in our office not to either dissuade or persuade kids to apply to certain schools, but just make sure everybody's kind of entering it with eyes wide open.